When warships creep, the world starts listening. And right now, the Caribbean is holding its breath. Tensions are boiling in the Caribbean as U.S. warships surround Venezuela. Reports claim strikes could happen at any moment, but officials deny it. What's really behind the radar? And here's where it gets intense. A new heavyweight just entered the ring. The USS Gettysburg, a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser, has officially joined the U.S. Naval Flotilla, already circling the Caribbean. That's not just another ship showing up. It's a signal, a big one. A U.S. Navy official confirmed to the war zone that the Gettysburg is now part of an expanded force, bringing serious firepower to what's being called an enhanced counter-narcotics operation. But make no mistake, everyone knows this mission isn't just about drugs. It's about pressure. Pressure on Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, who's been sitting under U.S. sanctions and indictments for years. Right now, the Gettysburg joins 8 other American warships already stationed in the area. That means destroyers, cruisers, and amphibious assault ships, all converging under the same mission banner. The timing couldn't be sharper. With rumors swirling that U.S. airstrikes on Venezuela might be imminent, the Gettysburg's arrival feels less like a coincidence and more like choreography. Imagine being out there, waves steady, radar screens alive, the hum of tension in the comms room. Every sailor knows this could shift from patrol to strike in a heartbeat. The question is, will it? But it doesn't stop there. The Gettysburg isn't sailing alone. Another Ticonderoga-class cruiser, the USS Lake Erie, joins it. Together, they're the muscle of this expanding U.S. flotilla, bringing not just heavy firepower, but unmatched versatility. Each of these cruisers carries a formidable mix of Tomahawk missiles, surface-to-air defenses, and advanced radar. The kind of gear that can lock down an entire stretch of ocean if needed. And just over the horizon, there's another player on its way. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group. The Navy's most advanced aircraft carrier, still a week out from the region, is set to turn this buildup into something much bigger. With 2 cruisers, multiple destroyers, and a carrier strike group in one theater, this isn't just a routine show of force, it's a statement of intent. For the U.S., having this kind of presence near Venezuela means control, deterrence, and options. For everyone watching from Caracas, it's a different message, one that says the pressure is closing in fast. The Caribbean is suddenly looking less like calm blue water and more like a chessboard. Every ship that moves changes the stakes. And here's where it gets even more explosive, quite literally. According to the Miami Herald, U.S. airstrikes on Venezuela could come at any moment. The report cited sources claiming that American forces have already identified targets, not just random ones, but key nodes in what they call a cartel hierarchy. The alleged plan? To decapitate the leadership behind Venezuela's narco networks, potentially crippling Maduro's power structure overnight. But the question hanging in the air, would that include Nicolas Maduro himself? Nobody knows for sure. What we do know is that back in 2020, a New York federal court indicted Maduro and 14 of his closest allies on narco-terrorism charges, accusing them of partnering with Colombia's FARC insurgents to traffic cocaine into the U.S. The Department of Justice even put a $50 million bounty on his arrest, the kind of reward you only see for world-class fugitives. So now, with U.S. cruisers and carrier groups inching closer, the timing of these reports feels too abrupt to ignore. Rumors say hours or days. Officials say no. But the Caribbean sky has that eerie calm, the kind that always comes before thunder. Just when the rumors seemed wild enough, the Wall Street Journal dropped another layer of confirmation or confusion, depending on how you look at it. Their report said the Trump administration had already identified specific targets inside Venezuela. These weren't vague objectives. They included military facilities allegedly tied to drug smuggling, the kind of places that blur the line between state and cartel. Anonymous U.S. officials told the paper that a potential air campaign was already being discussed, a strike package aimed squarely at the nexus of the drug gangs in the Maduro regime. According to those insiders, the targets under review could include ports, airstrips, and naval bases controlled by Venezuelan forces, but suspected of moving narcotics under government protection. It sounded like the kind of covert planning that happens just before the world finds out the hard way. Yet even as the leak spread, there was no green light, at least not yet. Still, hearing about mapped-out targets makes one thing clear. The pieces are in place. Whether the next move comes from a commander's order or a president's word, the setup for something massive is already complete. When reporters pressed President Donald Trump aboard Air Force One about potential strikes on Venezuela, his response was short but clear. No. When asked again, he repeated it. No. Despite growing media chatter, Trump denied any decision had been made regarding a military operation. The White House quickly backed this stance. Spokesperson Anna Kelly told reporters, "Unnamed sources don't know what they're talking about," dismissing reports of imminent U.S. action as baseless speculation. Yet behind the scenes, officials remained tight-lipped about the details. No timeline, targets, or operational plans were confirmed publicly. Still, the administration emphasized that the U.S. military was maintaining readiness for all contingencies. This dual messaging, official denial mixed with operational alertness, only deepened the uncertainty. For observers, it was hard to tell whether this was a standard deterrence strategy or a smokescreen concealing real plans in motion. The Pentagon kept an indisputable tone of readiness, even as the White House tried to downplay strike reports. Speaking anonymously, a U.S. defense officer stated, "We are prepared to carry out any orders provided to us." The statement showed that preparations were already in place, even if no strike seemed imminent. Naval and air assets had been reoriented, and intelligence sharing networks were ready. Officials suggested that smaller-scale activities, such as intercepting or raiding suspected drug smuggling boats in the Caribbean, were still underway. Lawmakers who contended that these restricted engagements lacked congressional approval had already criticized them. Still, the Pentagon's message was unambiguous. Execution would be quick if the Oval Office sent a green light. It was a familiar pattern, a show of force meant to project control even as Washington considered whether to convert deterrence into direct action. Newly acquired satellite images confirmed what several had suspected. U.S. naval vessels were gradually approaching Venezuelan territory. Among them were an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer and the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima, both found within around 125 miles of La Ochila, a primary military base. And this, one of President Nicolas Maduro's private residences, may be found on the Venezuelan island. Though the Navy declined to confirm or deny their exact locations, tracking information showed a gradual but calculated change nearer to Venezuelan marine limits. Analysts saw this as part of a pressure formation, which would provide the U.S. with several strike and surveillance possibilities without violating international law. Defense analysts observed the move's symbolic character. It was a strong indicator that Washington was carefully watching Caracas and might act swiftly. Such movements, however, also risked underestimation. Even a small event at sea could have sparked a diplomatic or military escalation, as both parties were on high alert. When a notice to airmen, NOTAM, unexpectedly closed sectors of airspace close to Puerto Rico, classifying it as national defense airspace, tensions rose even more. The warning cautioned that if required, any unauthorized plane entering the prohibited area may be intercepted, arrested, or even shot down. The prohibited zone surrounds Ceiba Airport, a strategic base that lately hosted F-35 Lightning II fighter planes. Defense experts thought this could be a possible staging area for Southern Caribbean operations, enabling fast deployment toward Venezuela if orders were given. The action emphasized how closely military logistics were being brought in line with possible strike areas. Though Pentagon authorities said the closure was regular, the timing, coinciding with increased tensions and naval activity, suggested a far more extensive planned readiness. Posture exceeds common preventive steps. Another crisis was developing amidst rising military tension. Thousands of people were homeless and seeking help when Hurricane Melissa had just torn across Haiti and Jamaica. Under U.S. Southern Command SOUTHCOM, Joint Task Force Bravo was dispatched, sending CH-47 to handle deterrence and disaster response. The Pentagon found itself now juggling two tasks: helicopters loaded with food, water, and medical supplies, UH-60/HH-60 Black Hawk in Chinook. While other units kept full combat readiness, soldiers and medical teams descended in flooded towns and damaged ports to provide life-saving help. Emphasizing the fine equilibrium of U.S. power projection was this dual aim, assisting neighbors in getting ready for possible strikes. The optics were complicated, warships on one side and humanitarian banners on the other. It served as a reminder that America's reach in the Caribbean might either heal or harm, depending on which order descended the chain of command initially. The USS Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group and the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit, a combined force of more than 4,000 Marines and sailors, were at the heart of this equilibrium. Possessing AV-8B Harrier II strike and relief jets, LCAC hovercraft, and MV-22 Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft, the crew represented one of the U.S. Navy's most versatile strike and relief forces. Assets. Its location enabled commanders to flip quickly between humanitarian assistance and combat operations, depending on directives. Pentagon sources confirmed that although no ultimate mission had been set, both possibilities were concurrently under consideration, offering disaster relief or supporting a strike campaign. The dual face of U.S. naval capability was represented by the deployment of the Iwo Jima, ready either to bring help to decimated islands or to send Marines onto a fought shoreline. Washington's attitude in one of the most fraught Caribbean buildups in years was shaped by that uncertainty, readiness for war or compassion. Army Colonel Emmanuel Ortiz of U.S. Southern Command Southcom confirmed in an official statement that American soldiers are still mission-ready for both humanitarian and counter-narcotics operations. He stressed that adaptability, the capacity to switch from saving hurricane survivors one day to conducting precise operations the next, characterizes the U.S. presence in the area. Ortiz's remarks highlighted the Pentagon's adaptable approach in the Caribbean, combining preparation without confirmation with compassion and deterrence. His message was simple. Whether that entails providing help or tackling threats developing from Venezuela's volatile borders, Southcom's resources are ready to react immediately. The USS Gettysburg is a floating fortification, not just another flotilla ship. It carries the type of hardware that alters whole areas, like a Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser. Tomahawk cruise missiles, among others, can hit ground targets with great accuracy from more than 1,000 miles away. While ballistic missile defense modifications allow the ship to intercept enemy missiles mid-flight, its Aegis fighting system offers full-spectrum air and missile defense. That makes Gettysburg equally useful in offense and defense. Beyond its armaments, it can function as a flagship command center, directing carrier groups or working independently in hostile waters. It is a warship capable of hunting submarines, disabling hostile aircraft, and conducting long-range attacks all simultaneously. This offered the Trump administration choices: a strike platform capable of striking without notice, or a shield guarding U.S. property in turbulent waters. Whatever, the Gettysburg's appearance transformed the Caribbean into a chessboard where every move now had weight. 10 miles from Venezuela's coast, Trinidad and Tobago, a country, moved to State 1 alert level, the highest level of military readiness. The Trinidad Express reported that all soldiers, Coast Guard personnel, and reservists were commanded back to base with instantaneous effect. The MV Ocean Trader, a converted cargo ship operated by U.S. Special Operations Command, quietly departed from Puerto Rico, bound for an undisclosed location. This ship has a reputation, popping up in tense zones like the Horn of Africa, the Persian Gulf, and now the Caribbean. Officially, it doesn't exist in any operation logs, and both the U.S. Navy and SOCOM refuse to comment when pressed by reporters. Here's where the layers start to show. On one hand, the U.S. is airlifting aid and rebuilding storm-hit islands. On the other, it's massing warships and stealth assets near Venezuela. It's a perfect display of dual messaging, power and compassion in the same breath. For Nicolas Maduro, the pressure could not be direct. His regime is cornered diplomatically, economically, and now militarily. Back in Washington, debates flare over unauthorized military action and how far a president can go without congressional approval. But if history tells us anything, Trump's maximum pressure strategy often speaks louder than his public denials. And sometimes silence isn't diplomacy, it's calculation. Every ship in that Caribbean flotilla is now part of a message, one written not in words but in movement. Finally, even Secretary of State Marco Rubio, one of the administration's strongest voices on Latin America, stepped forward to cool the speculation. He echoed the White House line, insisting there were no imminent plans for strikes, and calling the reports media exaggerations. Yet he stopped short of ruling anything out. Diplomats and analysts noticed that hesitation, the kind that leaves the door slightly open. So now the world waits, watching satellite feeds and warship movements, wondering if this entire buildup is a bluff, a warning, or a prelude to something the Caribbean hasn't seen in decades. Whether this is a show of strength or the calm before a storm, one thing is clear. The Caribbean is now a high-stakes chessboard. With warships, hurricanes, and politics colliding, the next move could decide far more than just Venezuela's fate. Like, share, and subscribe. This story's far from over.